Now, we honor the late Paul Curtner.
A passion for horses, unfailing honesty, and a dry sense of humor describes distinguished breeder Paul Curtner. From an early age, the son of a grocer enjoyed riding and trading horses. He was in the oil business but showed the stallion Town Crier to 50 grand championships, among other honors. E. Paul Wagner had a horse sale, and Daddy was in the oil field business at the time with some horses on the side, Paul's daughter Paula Bowen says. He went up there to buy a Blackburn mare. When the first mare came in, she had Poco Pine on her side, and he was about 5 months old, I think. They weren't getting any bids. My mother leaned over and said to him, because she knew how much money he had, "If you're going to buy a mare today, that's the mare you want." Daddy bid and got her. Paul wanted the mare, Pretty Rosalie, and wasn't impressed with her long-haired colt, but Pine Johnson told Paul that he should hang on to the colt to see what happened. After the colt got to be about 2, he started looking developed and muscled, Paula says, and Daddy decided he wanted to show him. Needing a registered name, Paul went with Poco Pine to pay tribute to both the colt's sire, Poco Bueno, and to Pine Johnson. When Poco Pine was a 2-year-old, Paul was offered $100,000 for the colt, says Brady Bowen, who often heard the story from his grandfather Paul. This was in 1956, Brady says. My granddad walked by Matlock Rose and asked, "Matlock, what do I need to do?" Matlock says, "Well, if you want to stay in the horse business, what you ought to do is load that horse up in that trailer right there and go home." Paul took the horse home and went on to earn 46 grand championships and 7 reserve grand championships in AQHA competition with Poco Pine, who also earned points in cutting and western pleasure before Paul retired the stallion to the breeding barn. With that decision, Paul found himself in the horse business. Poco Pine's foals earned more than 7,000 points in the performance arena in all 3 divisions and more than 3,000 points at halter in the 60s and early 70s. The stallion was inducted into the American Quarter Horse Hall of Fame in 2010. As Poco Pine entered his late teens, Paul began grooming the horse's successor, his homebred stallion Zippo Pat Bars, to cross on Poco Pine's daughters. He was big into the universal quarter horse as far as what he wanted to raise. He wanted to raise a horse for everybody, whether they roped or ranched, or wanted to show halter horses or cut. That's what he was after, and he accomplished that, Paula said. Zippo Pat Bars, now a member of the American Quarter Horse Hall of Fame, was a racing stallion who became known as a sire of Western pleasure horses. 2 of Zippo Pat Bars' sons are also in the Hall of Fame, Zippo Pine Bar and The Investor. With Paul's 3 stallions, Town Crier, Poco Pine, and Zippo Pat Bars, Paul bred the earners of 2,400 halter points and 10,000 performance points. Paul is among the top 20 breeders of open performance point earners. His horses earned 150 registers of merit, and 29 became champions, putting him in the top 10 of all-time breeders of AQHA champions. Paul was the founder of the American Quarter Horse Association Heritage Center and has a bust in the Hall of Fame. Daddy loved horses since he was a boy, Paula says. You either like something or you don't like it. It's a wonderful thing to realize when you're young what your passion really is, what you could be really good at, and he knew what his passion was. Paul died October 4th, 2003 at age 87, still talking about the next full crop. And now he joins his horses in the Hall of Fame.
Please welcome Brady Bowen to the stage to accept on behalf of Paul Curtner. Poco Pine. Really? I mean, good grief. What a deal. What a deal. Congratulations to you and your whole family.
Thank you. Thank you. I've been working on a speech all evening and y'all just got through looking at it. So now I'm gonna have to wing it. And that might be better anyway, because I know this is not so much about all of his horses. It's more about him as a man. And he was a great person to work for, very congenial, had ideas of the future. And I think, you know, a lot of the things that went on through the years, like after he saw what kind of mares he had with Poco Pine. And by the way, myself as a young man, a young kid, 8 or 9 years old, I can remember going to the ranch in Chico, and they'd put me on a little old horse and say, go pen the mares. Well, the mares consisted of 100 head. Pretty unbelievable to go to the backside of the pasture and all the mares turn around and go back to the barn. And this was in pretty close to 1972 or 3. And they go up there, of course, at that time had Poco Pine and Zippo Pat bars there, and they bred over 100 mares a year. It was amazing, and one of the first artificial insemination horse ranches in the country. And it was amazing, and of course I was very young. Some of it I didn't, of course all I ever wanted to do was be a cutting horse trainer. Y'all don't hold that against me, but that's what it was. Daddy Paul, he tried to get me to be a halter horse person and a pleasure horse person, and nothing against it, but I guess I was just too much cowboy. I couldn't do it. But and nothing against that either, but I like to bit my tongue there, didn't I? But anyway, here we go on with that. Zippo Pat bars came along, you know, in 1964, 10 years after Poco Pine. And I know he had visions of a lot of those. He had Poco Pine bred to a lot of those Wagner mares, and I know he had a vision that he wanted a universal quarter horse, and he wanted to take that Leo mare. And he also took Pretty Rosalie's, which was Poco Pine's mother, to California and bred them to 3 bars. And I know he wanted a more refined quarter horse. And I think from there, the rest is history. But of course, he was involved in the cutting horse business with me and on, and he lived one of the greatest lives of any person that I know. He loved the American quarter horse, and he dealt with the American quarter horse his whole 87 years. And he told me one time, and I'm gonna quit on this one, he said, the only thing that I like better than the American quarter horse is the American quarter horse people. And I think that's pretty good. And thank all of y'all, the AQHA, and thank everybody for having us. Appreciate you.